I had been away for over 2 weeks, working on a project in another city. The whole time, all I could think about was coming home to Ashley and the kids. Home. The place where I felt the safest, the most grounded. When I finally pulled into our driveway, the familiar sight of our house filled me with a warmth I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The porch lights were on, and I could see through the window that the living room was softly lit. It felt like everything was exactly as it should be. I grabbed my suitcase from the car, and as I walked up to the door, I could feel the excitement bubbling up inside me. I hadn't told Ashley exactly when I'd be home, so it would be a surprise. The door opened before I had a chance to knock, and there she was. Ashley. Mark! Her voice was filled with warmth, and for a moment, I forgot the fatigue from the trip. Her smile was radiant, the kind of smile that made me feel like the luckiest man alive. She wrapped her arms around me, pulling me into a tight hug. I missed you, she whispered into my ear. I missed you too, I said, kissing the top of her head. She stepped back, holding me at arm's length, her eyes glistening with something that I couldn't quite place. You'll be so happy you're home. There's something I need to tell you. I raised an eyebrow, my curiosity piqued. I'm pregnant, she said, her smile widening. And not just with one, with triplets. Triplets. I blinked in surprise, not quite knowing how to process what she'd just said. Triplets? I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. It felt like the room suddenly grew smaller. My thoughts raced. Yes, I took the test this morning. I didn't want to tell you over the phone. I wanted to tell you in person. It took a moment for the shock to wear off, but when it did, I tried to force a smile, hoping it looked genuine. That's amazing, I said, the words coming out slow and unsure. I reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. 3 babies. Wow. Ashley beamed. She was glowing, her eyes full of excitement, her energy palpable. Isn't it incredible? She asked, her voice bright. I can't believe it either. I thought we'd only have one more, but God clearly had other plans. I nodded, but inside a small knot was forming in my stomach. I couldn't explain it, but something didn't feel quite right. It was the way she said it, the way she was almost too excited. But I pushed the feeling away. There was no reason to doubt her. No reason at all. We were about to have triplets. This was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of our lives. The following days passed in a blur. The shock of the news that we were going to have triplets slowly began to settle in, but with it came a mixture of excitement and a growing sense of unease. I didn't know what it was exactly, but something felt off. Maybe it was just the overwhelming nature of the news, or the way Ashley had seemed almost too happy. It didn't feel like the nervous excitement I expected after finding out about triplets. It felt something else. Ashley and I spent hours talking about the future, planning for the baby room, discussing names, and figuring out how we were going to manage life with 3 new babies. The plans were coming together quickly. We were a team. Everything had always felt like that between us. But still, there was this quiet knot that continued to grow in my chest. Then one evening, everything changed. It was a Thursday night, and we were sitting in the living room after dinner. I was exhausted from the week's work, but Ashley seemed full of energy, chatting away about baby clothes and nursery themes. She had always been the one who was organized, always making sure every little detail was taken care of. But that night, she seemed more animated than usual. I think I want to get everything ready now, she said with a gleam in her eye. Before it gets too real. I mean, triplets. We can't waste time. Her enthusiasm was infectious, but my gut kept telling me something was wrong. My thoughts drifted back to those first few days after my return. The way she had looked at me, almost too eager, too perfect, too calm for someone who had just found out she was expecting 3 babies. There was a brief moment when I caught her texting late at night while I was getting ready for bed. She quickly hid the phone when she saw me looking, but by that point, my curiosity had been piqued. That evening, after Ashley went to bed, I found myself awake in the dark, unable to sleep. I kept thinking about the strange feeling gnawing at me. I decided to do something I'd never done before, look through her things. I wasn't proud of it, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was missing something. I crept into the guest room, where she kept a small drawer filled with important papers. There, under a pile of receipts, was a folder with a name on it that made my heart stop. Dr. Mitchell, the label said. I opened it carefully, my hands shaking as I pulled out the contents. Inside were ultrasound pictures, but not the ones she'd shown me. These were recent, dated only a few days before I came home. 3 perfectly clear images, all showing triplets. There was just one problem. The dates didn't line up with when she had told me she was pregnant. My mind raced. I flipped through the folder, searching for answers, and then I found it. A medical note, written in a formal tone, confirming the pregnancy. But beneath the confirmation, there was something else. A note in bold, written in a hurried hand. Patient not aware of multiple paternity. The words felt like a punch to the gut. I dropped the folder, my mind reeling. What did that mean? Multiple paternity? The thought hit me like a ton of bricks, and I could hardly process it. I thought back to when I'd left for the business trip. Ashley had seemed so distant, and I'd brushed it off. I hadn't known what was happening while I was away. Had I been naive? Did she? No. I refused to believe it. She wouldn't do that. Not to me. But the evidence in front of me was undeniable. The questions in my mind were multiplying faster than I could answer them. And worse, I wasn't sure who to turn to. I put everything back, making sure it was exactly as I'd found it, and retreated to our bedroom, my heart racing. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for Ashley to wake up. I knew I needed to confront her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it yet. Not like this. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear the truth. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache, the weight of what I'd found pressing heavily on me. Ashley was already up, bustling around the kitchen, humming to herself as though the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet just hours before. I watched her from the doorway, my mind racing. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more answers. I needed proof. That day, while Ashley went out to lunch with a few friends, I set my plan into motion. I started small, combing through her phone. I wasn't proud of what I was doing, but I had to know. My heart raced as I scrolled through her messages. Most of them were ordinary. Texts from her mother, her sister, her friends. But one thread stood out. It was with Travis, our neighbor. There were no obvious signs of anything inappropriate. No incriminating photos, no declarations of love. But it was the tone of the messages that set me on edge. They were too casual, too friendly. Inside jokes I didn't understand. Little comments that hinted at a familiarity I couldn't ignore. I needed more than this. That's when I decided to take things a step further. I had an old security system that I hadn't used in years. It wasn't fancy, but it would do the job. While Ashley was still out, I set up a few hidden cameras in the house. Places where they wouldn't be obvious, but would capture everything. The living room, the kitchen, the guest room. I felt sick doing it, but the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't let me stop. I told myself it was for peace of mind. If nothing happened, then I could move on, chalking up my paranoia to stress. But if something did happen, for days, I acted normal, pretending everything was fine. Ashley went about her days, oblivious to what I was doing. She continued planning the baby shower, excitedly chatting about decorations and games, completely unaware that I was watching. And then, one afternoon, I got what I was looking for. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a notification from the camera system. I stepped out of a meeting, my heart pounding as I opened the app. There they were, Ashley and Travis, standing in our living room. At first, it seemed innocent enough. They were just talking, standing a respectable distance apart. But as I watched, the conversation grew more animated. Ashley laughed, reaching out to touch his arm. Travis leaned in closer. My stomach churned. And then it happened. She kissed him. It was brief, almost hesitant, but it was enough. Enough to confirm everything I'd feared. I stood frozen, my phone in my hand, watching as the woman I'd built a life with shared an intimacy with another man right there in our home. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I couldn't watch anymore. I closed the app and leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. The betrayal was worse than I'd imagined. But this wasn't over. Not yet. That night, I didn't say a word to Ashley. I couldn't. Instead, I focused on what I had to do next. I knew I needed solid evidence if I was going to confront her. If I was going to protect myself and my future, I had to be smart. I downloaded the footage, storing it on a secure drive. I also began researching DNA testing services. If there was even the slightest chance that Travis was the father of those babies, I needed to know. The knot in my stomach tightened as I thought about what this would mean. For me, for Ashley, for our family. But one thing was certain. The truth couldn't stay hidden forever. The next few days passed in a haze. Every interaction with Ashley felt like walking on a razor's edge. She carried on with her usual energy, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. I played my part, acting as though everything was fine, even as the weight of the truth threatened to crush me. But I knew what I had to do. That weekend, while Ashley was out shopping for decorations for the gender reveal party, I took my next step. I had already ordered a home DNA test kit, which had arrived the day before. Now I needed samples. I started with Ashley. Her hairbrush sat on the bathroom counter, strands of her blonde hair tangled in the bristles. I carefully extracted a few, placing them into the kit's labeled envelope. Then, I turned my attention to myself. My sample was easy enough to provide, just a quick swab of my cheek. The last sample, however, was the hardest. Alex, our 6-year-old son, was playing with his toys in the living room. He was completely engrossed in his little world, building towers out of blocks and narrating his own adventures. My heart ached as I watched him. He was so innocent, so pure. The thought that he might not be mine was a dagger to my chest. "Hey, buddy," I said, crouching down beside him. "Mind if I take one of your cups? I need it for a little science project." He grinned at me, his blue eyes lighting up. "A science project? Can I help?" "Maybe later," I said, ruffling his hair. "This part's boring, but I'll show you the cool stuff when it's done." He handed me his cup without hesitation, and I quickly placed it in a plastic bag, my heart heavy with guilt. Alex didn't deserve this. No matter what the results said, he was still my son in every way that mattered. But I needed to know the truth for both of us. I sent off the samples the next morning, paying extra for expedited results. The waiting was agonizing. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach dropped. Every glance Ashley threw my way felt like a spotlight, even though she didn't suspect a thing. When the email finally arrived, I was alone in my car, parked in an empty lot near work. My hands trembled as I opened it, scrolling down to the results. Probability of paternity, 0%. The words burned into my brain. I read them over and over, hoping I was misinterpreting them, but there was no mistake. Alex wasn't mine. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, my mind racing. Every memory I had of Alex, his first steps, his first words, the way he ran to me every time I came home, flashed before my eyes. Nothing could erase those moments, but now they felt tainted by a lie I hadn't even known I was living. But the results didn't stop there. A second test result followed, this one focusing on the triplets. My heart pounded as I opened it, my breath catching in my throat. Probability of paternity, 0%. It was exactly as I feared. None of the babies were mine. Not Alex. Not the triplets. Nothing. I closed my eyes, my fists clenched tightly around the steering wheel. The betrayal was complete, and there was no coming back from it. But if Ashley thought I was just going to roll over and accept this, she was wrong. I wasn't the type of man to let someone walk all over me. She had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. The results solidified what I already knew. My life as I had known it was a lie. Alex, the triplets, none of them were mine. And yet, I had to keep my composure. I couldn't let Ashley know I was onto her. Not yet. The first thing I did was call my lawyer. I explained the situation without going into unnecessary detail. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Sarah, listened carefully before laying out my options. "You need to protect your assets immediately," she said. "If you plan to file for divorce, you want to make sure she can't touch your finances. Start gathering any evidence of infidelity and document everything. The more prepared you are, the better chance you have of walking away unscathed." I took her advice seriously. That night, after Ashley went to bed, I began consolidating my financial accounts. I transferred money into a private account she didn't know about and reviewed the prenup we had signed years ago. Back then, it had seemed like a formality, but now it felt like a lifeline. Over the next few weeks, I became a man with a mission. Every smile, every laugh, every casual conversation with Ashley became part of a careful performance. I was no longer just her husband. I was her shadow, watching her every move, collecting the pieces of her betrayal. The hidden cameras continued to capture more than I wanted to see. Ashley and Travis weren't exactly discreet. They met at our house, in his car, even at the park where Alex played. Each interaction confirmed what I already knew. Their relationship wasn't some fleeting mistake. It was deliberate, ongoing, and cruel. The hardest part was maintaining a normal routine with Alex. He didn't know what was happening, and I didn't want to hurt him. He was my son in every way that mattered, even if biology said otherwise. I couldn't let him become collateral damage in this disaster. Meanwhile, Ashley was in full party planning mode. The gender reveal event was shaping up to be a grand affair, with friends, family, and neighbors all invited. She was buzzing with excitement, completely unaware that I had been quietly building my case against her. "Travis and Caitlin are coming, right?" she asked one evening, scrolling through her guest list. I forced a smile. Of course. Wouldn't miss it. The thought of Travis, standing there, laughing, pretending to be my friend while secretly destroying my family, made my blood boil. But I swallowed my anger. The party would be my stage, and he would finally be unmasked. By the time the day of the party arrived, everything was in place. My lawyer had reviewed the evidence, the divorce papers were drawn up, and the results of the DNA tests were ready. I had rehearsed what I would say 100 times, but now, standing in the backyard as guests began to arrive, my nerves were on edge. Ashley floated around the yard, greeting people, her glowing smile making it hard to believe the depth of her betrayal. She wore a flowing dress that accentuated her growing belly, and everyone commented on how radiant she looked. The irony wasn't lost on me. Travis arrived with Caitlin shortly after. He looked as smug as ever, chatting easily with the neighbors, his arm casually draped over his wife's shoulders. Caitlin, oblivious to the truth, laughed at his jokes, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. I stayed in the background, watching, waiting. The moment wasn't quite right yet, but it was coming, and when it did, it would be unforgettable. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden light over the backyard. The party was in full swing, laughter echoing through the air as people chatted and snacked on hors d'oeuvres. Children played, and Ashley's glow was radiant as she drifted from guest to guest, happily showing off her baby bump. She hadn't a clue that tonight was the beginning of the end. At some point, the conversation shifted toward the big moment, the gender reveal. The excitement in the air was palpable, and Ashley's voice rang out as she announced it. "I think it's time," she said with a smile, her hand resting on her stomach. "Who's ready to find out what we're having?" There was a chorus of cheers and applause. People gathered around, eagerly waiting. Ashley had arranged a big reveal balloon that would release a burst of pink or blue confetti, depending on the baby's genders. But I had my own plans for the reveal. I quietly approached Sarah, my lawyer, who had been standing on the fringes, observing. She gave me a reassuring nod. Everything was in place. "Are we sure we're ready?" I asked in a hushed voice, my eyes scanning the crowd. "We are," she said. "This will be your moment. Make it count." With a deep breath, I stepped forward, making my way toward Ashley. The moment had arrived. My heart pounded in my chest, not with fear, but with the weight of what was about to unfold. "Hey, babe," I said, my voice calm despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "Before we do the reveal, there's something I need to talk to you about. It's important." She looked at me, a curious smile tugging at her lips. "What's up, honey?" I took her hand, trying not to show how tightly my fists were clenched. The crowd had begun to murmur, sensing the tension. "I've known for a while now," I said, my voice steady. "About you and Travis." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I've known about the affair, and I've been collecting evidence. I have the proof. I'm not leaving here without making sure you know the truth. The babies, they're not mine." The words hit the air like a slap, and the crowd fell silent. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, but I didn't care. This was it. This was the moment that everything changed. Ashley stood frozen, her mouth slightly open as she processed my words. Her expression shifted from confusion to panic, then to anger. "What the hell are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice rising. "That's not true, you're insane." "I have the DNA test results right here," I said, pulling the folded envelope from my pocket. And I'm sure you've noticed by now, the triplets are not mine. They belong to Travis. The crowd murmured in shock, and I could see Ashley's face flush with color. Her hand shook as she reached for the envelope. Don't even try to deny it, I continued, as her fingers fumbled to open the envelope. The truth is right here in black and white. You betrayed me, Ashley, and you did it under my roof, in front of our son. So no, I won't stand here and pretend anymore. She ripped the envelope open and quickly scanned the papers. Her face paled as she read the results. The blood drained from her features, and she took a staggering step back, her hand flying to her mouth. I never thought you'd find out, she whispered, her voice trembling. I never meant for it to get this far. Don't make excuses, I shot back, my anger seeping through. You destroyed everything, and now you're going to face the consequences. For a long moment, no one spoke. The world seemed to hold its breath as Ashley stood there, stunned, while I watched her unravel. The guilt was written all over her face, but she had no words left to justify what she had done. And then, like the last piece of a puzzle falling into place, I turned to Travis. He stood across the yard trying to blend into the background, but I had his number now. Travis, I said, my voice cold as ice. You're just as guilty as she is. You've been sleeping with my wife, and you've been lying to everyone here. You think I didn't notice? He shifted uncomfortably, his expression turning defensive. Man, don't do this. Oh, I'm doing this, I said, taking a step toward him. You're going to be exposed for the coward you are. You've been living in my house, playing the role of a friend, while you've been destroying my family. How pathetic is that? Ashley turned on him now, her face a mix of horror and rage. Travis, why didn't you tell me he knew? Why didn't you? You're right, he said, cutting her off. I should have told you. But now we're both going down for this. I stood there, watching the two of them as everything fell apart. It wasn't the revenge I had imagined. It was something much worse, seeing the lies unraveling before my eyes. But this was justice. I'd suffered for too long, and now it was time to reclaim my life. I took one final breath and turned back to the crowd. The shock had worn off, and now everyone was whispering in disbelief. The gender reveal balloon sat forgotten on the table, its bright colors dimmed by the weight of the moment. I'm done, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Ashley, Travis, this marriage is over. And as for the babies, I'm not raising them. I'm walking away, and I'm taking control of my life again. Ashley's eyes welled up with tears, and she took a step toward me. Please, she begged. Don't leave me. I made a mistake, but it was too late. The damage had been done. I left the party as quickly as I could after the reveal, leaving Ashley and Travis to deal with the fallout. As I walked away, I could hear the murmurs and whispers behind me, the shocked voices of friends and neighbors trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. I didn't care. The weight of betrayal, the humiliation, and the anger, they were no longer my burden. I had exposed the truth, and now it was time to move forward. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Sarah, to finalize the divorce filings. The evidence I had gathered, DNA tests, video recordings, and text messages, left no room for doubt. You're in a strong position, Sarah said, her tone professional but supportive. With this evidence, you'll protect your assets, and there's no chance she can claim you're responsible for the triplets. Legally, you're in the clear. Hearing those words gave me some relief, but it didn't erase the pain. The house, the marriage, the family I had worked so hard to build, it was all gone. Still, I reminded myself that I was doing this for me. I deserved better than to live a lie. A few days later, I returned to the house to pack my belongings. Ashley was there, waiting for me. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She had clearly been crying for days. Mark, she said softly as I walked in, please. Can we talk? I know I made a mistake, but we can fix this. I love you. Her words felt hollow, like an echo of something that had once been real but no longer existed. I looked at her, feeling a strange mix of pity and resentment. It's too late, Ashley, I said, my voice steady but firm. You didn't just make a mistake. You lied to me for years. You let me believe Alex was my son. You planned to let me raise 3 babies that weren't mine. Do you even understand what you've done? She broke down, sobbing into her hands. I never wanted to hurt you, she choked out. I didn't know how to stop. It just happened. That's not good enough, I replied. I gave you everything, my trust, my love, my time, and you threw it away. I'm done, Ashley. This marriage is over. I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her in tears. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but I knew it was the only way forward. The divorce proceedings were swift and decisive. With Sarah's help, I ensured that Ashley had no claim to my finances or assets. The DNA evidence made it clear that I wasn't responsible for the triplets, and Ashley couldn't argue otherwise. Alex was a different matter. Legally, I wasn't his father, but emotionally, I couldn't just walk away from him. Despite everything, he was still my son, the boy I had raised, loved, and cherished for 6 years. The court granted Ashley primary custody, but I fought for and won visitation rights. I knew Alex deserved the truth one day, but for now, I was determined to remain in his life. Whatever happened between Ashley and me, he was innocent in all of this, and I wouldn't abandon him. As for Ashley and Travis, their lives began to unravel. Caitlin, Travis's wife, wasted no time filing for divorce after the party. She took the kids, the house, and a hefty share of his assets, leaving him scrambling to rebuild his life. Ashley, now burdened with 3 babies on the way and no financial support from me, was forced to lean on Travis. Their relationship, built on lies and betrayal, began to crumble under the weight of their new reality. From what I heard through mutual friends, they were barely holding things together. Months passed. The divorce was finalized, and I moved into a modest apartment across town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. I threw myself into my work, picking up extra projects to keep my mind occupied. I started going to the gym again, reconnecting with old friends, and even picking up hobbies I had long forgotten. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my life. One evening, I took Alex out for ice cream. As we sat on a bench, watching the sunset, he looked up at me with his big blue eyes and smiled. "Daddy," he said, his voice innocent and pure. "Can we do this again soon?" "Of course, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair. "Anytime you want." In that moment, I realized that no matter what had happened, I still had a future to look forward to. The betrayal, the lies, the pain, they were part of my past now. What mattered was the life I was building for myself and for Alex. A few weeks later, I took a trip to the coast. Standing on the beach, the waves crashing against the shore, I felt the last of the weight lift from my shoulders. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, a symbol of possibility and freedom. I smiled for the first time in what felt like years. I wasn't defined by what had happened to me. I was free to start over, to build a life on my terms. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful.